3 weeks after the incident in the riding arena, life at Windsor Castle had settled into a new rhythm that incorporated the lessons learned from that traumatic morning. The enhanced security protocols had become routine, Camilla's medical evaluation had been completed with reassuring results, and Charlotte had not only returned to riding but had shown remarkable improvement in both her technical skills and her confidence. Dr. Henderson sat in her office reviewing the comprehensive test results that had finally provided a complete picture of what had caused Camilla's episode of confusion. The neurological examination had revealed no signs of dementia, stroke, or other serious cognitive disorders. Instead, the investigation had uncovered a complex interaction between prescription medications, unusual stress levels, and a minor blood sugar fluctuation that had created perfect conditions for temporary disorientation. The good news is that this appears to have been a one-time occurrence caused by a specific combination of factors that we can prevent from happening again, Dr. Henderson explained to Camilla during their final consultation. The medication adjustment we've made should eliminate the interaction that contributed to your confusion. Camilla received this news with visible relief, though she remained concerned about the driving restrictions that had been implemented as a precautionary measure. Dr. Henderson, I appreciate the thoroughness of your investigation, but I'm eager to understand when I might be able to resume normal driving privileges. The doctor had anticipated this question and had prepared a careful response that balanced medical caution with practical considerations. Your Royal Highness, I'm comfortable recommending that your driving privileges be restored, but with some modifications to help prevent similar episodes. The modifications included regular blood sugar monitoring, a simplified medication schedule that eliminated potential interactions, and an agreement to have a protection officer present during longer drives. These changes were designed to provide additional safety nets without significantly restricting Camilla's independence. Meanwhile, Charlotte was preparing for what had become her favorite part of the week, her expanded riding lessons with Margaret. The incident had paradoxically strengthened rather than weakened Charlotte's passion for equestrian activities, and she had requested additional practice time to work on more advanced techniques. Your position over fences has improved dramatically, Margaret told Charlotte as she guided Snowdrop through a series of increasingly challenging obstacles. You're riding with much more confidence and focus than before the incident. This observation was accurate but also somewhat puzzling to Margaret. In her experience, traumatic events typically created anxiety and hesitation in young riders, rather than improved performance. Charlotte's response had been uniquely positive and growth-oriented. Charlotte's explanation for her improved riding was characteristically thoughtful. Margaret, after what happened with Grandmama Camilla's car, I realized that I want to be the best rider I can be. If something dangerous happens again, I want to be skilled enough to handle whatever situation might develop. This mature perspective on skill development impressed Margaret and reinforced her belief that Charlotte possessed exceptional emotional resilience. The young princess was using her traumatic experience as motivation for self-improvement rather than as an excuse for avoidance. Detective Sergeant Mitchell had become something of a celebrity within the Royal Protection Unit following his actions during the incident. His quick thinking and decisive response had been analyzed and incorporated into new training protocols that would benefit protection officers throughout the organization. Mitchell's performance that morning represents exactly the kind of split-second decision-making that we hope to see from all our officers, explained Commander Sarah Thompson during a training session for new recruits. His ability to assess a rapidly developing threat and take appropriate action potentially saved the life of Princess Charlotte. The incident had also led to enhanced coordination between protection officers assigned to different family members. New communication protocols ensured that officers would be immediately aware of any unusual circumstances affecting other royals in their vicinity. Mitchell himself had been somewhat uncomfortable with the attention his actions had generated, preferring to focus on the lessons learned rather than personal recognition. However, he had been deeply moved by Charlotte's continued expressions of gratitude and by the genuine friendship that had developed between them. Your Royal Highness has taught me as much as I hopefully taught her, Mitchell reflected during a debriefing session with his supervisors. Her courage in returning to riding and her maturity in processing what happened has been truly remarkable to witness. The formal recognition of Mitchell's service came in the form of a commendation from Prince William, presented during a private ceremony attended by Charlotte and her immediate family. The young princess had specifically requested to be present for this recognition, viewing it as an important opportunity to publicly acknowledge the debt she owed to her protector. Detective Sergeant Mitchell, William said during the presentation, "Your actions on that morning exemplified the very best traditions of service to the crown. Princess Charlotte is alive and unharmed today because of your training, your dedication, and your willingness to put her safety before your own." Charlotte had prepared her own remarks for the occasion, insisting that her voice be heard in recognizing Mitchell's service. "Detective Sergeant Mitchell, you taught me that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when you are scared. Thank you for showing me what real courage looks like." The ceremony concluded with Charlotte presenting Mitchell with a personally written letter of thanks and a photograph of herself with Snowdrop, both items that he would treasure for the rest of his career. Camilla's return to driving was marked by her first solo trip to the village since the incident, a journey that she undertook with some nervousness but ultimately completed without difficulty. The psychological impact of the accident had been significant, and overcoming her anxiety about driving required considerable courage. "I found myself gripping the steering wheel much more tightly than usual," Camilla confided to her lady-in-waiting, Jennifer Morrison, after returning from the trip. "But it felt good to prove to myself that I could do it again." The successful completion of this first drive marked an important milestone in Camilla's recovery from the psychological effects of the incident. Dr. Henderson had warned that confidence behind the wheel might take time to rebuild, but Camilla's determination to resume her normal activities had accelerated the process. The media coverage of the incident had been handled with characteristic discretion by the Royal Communications team. The initial brief statement had been followed by a single update confirming that all family members had received clean bills of health and had returned to their normal activities. Sarah Morrison's team had successfully managed to keep specific details of the incident private while providing sufficient information to prevent speculation and rumors. This approach reflected the royal family's long-standing policy of maintaining dignity while acknowledging public interest in their welfare. "The public response has been overwhelmingly positive," Morrison reported during a communications team meeting. "People appreciate being informed that there was an incident and that everyone is safe, without feeling entitled to medical or personal details." The incident had also prompted a comprehensive review of safety protocols throughout all royal residences. A team of specialists had conducted detailed assessments of vehicle access routes, emergency response procedures, and coordination between different security agencies. The review had resulted in several improvements, including enhanced vehicle tracking systems, improved communication networks between protection officers, and additional training for staff who might encounter emergency situations. These changes were implemented quietly and efficiently, without creating an atmosphere of increased tension or fear. Charlotte's relationship with Snowdrop had also been affected by the incident, though in positive ways. The shared experience of danger had seemed to deepen the bond between the young princess and her pony, and their partnership in the riding arena had reached new levels of trust and coordination. "Snowdrop seems to understand that Charlotte protected her during the accident," Margaret observed to David Walsh during one of their regular discussions about the castle's equestrian program. "There's a new level of connection between them that's beautiful to witness." This enhanced partnership had translated into improved performance over fences and better communication between horse and rider. Charlotte's confidence had grown along with her skills, creating a positive feedback loop that accelerated her development as an equestrian. The long-term psychological impact of the incident on Charlotte became a subject of ongoing assessment by child development specialists who worked with the royal family. Dr. Emma Richards, who had been monitoring Charlotte's emotional well-being since early childhood, was particularly interested in how the young princess had processed such a traumatic experience. "Charlotte's response has been remarkably healthy and adaptive," Dr. Richards noted in her evaluation. "Rather than developing anxiety or avoidance behaviors, she has used the incident as motivation for personal growth and skill development." This positive response was attributed to several factors, including Charlotte's naturally resilient personality, the excellent support system provided by her family, and the transparent way that the incident had been discussed and processed by all involved parties. The academic research community had also taken notice of Charlotte's response to trauma, though all studies were conducted with appropriate respect for privacy and without direct access to the princess herself. Several papers were published examining how children of high public profile process traumatic events and the role of family support systems in promoting resilience. Dr. Michael Foster, a specialist in childhood trauma at the University of London, noted that Charlotte's case demonstrated several important principles for helping children recover from frightening experiences. Honest communication, age-appropriate explanation of events, and immediate return to normal activities all appear to have contributed to this positive outcome. The writing arena itself had been completely restored within days of the incident, with new fencing that incorporated additional safety features and improved sightlines for protection officers. The jumping course had been redesigned to provide multiple exit routes in case of future emergencies. Margaret had worked closely with security specialists to ensure that the new arena layout maintained its educational value while providing enhanced safety for both horses and riders. The result was a facility that was both more secure and more functional than before. "We've managed to improve safety without creating an atmosphere of fear or restriction," Margaret explained to visiting equestrian specialists who had come to study the enhanced security measures. "Charlotte's experience in the arena is actually better now than it was before the incident." The relationship between Charlotte and Camilla had also been strengthened by their shared experience of the incident and its aftermath. The young princess's mature response to the situation had earned her step-grandmother's deep respect and admiration. "Charlotte has shown wisdom and grace that would be remarkable in someone much older," Camilla told Prince Charles during one of their regular conversations about family matters. "She has taught all of us something about forgiveness and resilience." This enhanced relationship had led to Charlotte spending more time with Camilla, learning about royal history and traditions from someone who had experienced many of the challenges that the young princess would face in her future role. The professional development opportunities that had emerged from the incident extended beyond the Royal Protection Unit to include emergency medical services, vehicle safety specialists, and crisis communication experts. The case study of the incident was being used to train professionals in various fields who might encounter similar situations. Detective Inspector Fraser had been invited to present the lessons learned from the incident at conferences throughout Europe, sharing insights about rapid threat assessment and multi-agency coordination during royal security emergencies. This incident demonstrated both the challenges and the capabilities of modern royal protection, Fraser explained during one such presentation. The successful outcome was the result of excellent training, clear protocols, and individuals who were willing to act decisively when lives were at stake. Charlotte's academic studies had also been enhanced by her experience of the incident. Her teachers had incorporated lessons about emergency response, medical science, and public safety into her curriculum, using her direct experience as a foundation for broader learning. Charlotte's questions about what happened to Grandmama Camilla led to fascinating discussions about neurology, pharmacology, and medical research, explained her tutor, Dr. Rebecca Williams. "She has developed a genuine interest in understanding how the human body works and what can go wrong with it." This academic interest had extended to include studies of automotive safety, emergency response systems, and even the psychology of trauma recovery. Charlotte's natural curiosity had been channeled into educational opportunities that might not have emerged without her personal experience of these topics. The technological improvements that had been implemented following the incident included enhanced GPS tracking for all royal vehicles, improved communication systems for protection officers, and new medical monitoring devices that could provide early warning of health issues. These technological advances had been developed in partnership with leading companies in the security and medical technology industries, creating innovations that would eventually benefit protection services and emergency response organizations worldwide. The royal family's commitment to safety has led to technological developments that will ultimately help protect many other people, explained Dr. Robert Chan, who had led the development team for the new medical monitoring systems. Charlotte's continued relationship with Detective Sergeant Mitchell had evolved into something that resembled a mentorship, with the experienced protection officer sharing insights about situational awareness and personal safety that extended far beyond the immediate requirements of royal protection. "Detective Sergeant Mitchell has taught me to notice things about my surroundings that I never paid attention to before," Charlotte told her parents during one of their regular family discussions. "He's shown me how to be aware of what's happening around me without being worried or scared about it." This enhanced awareness had made Charlotte a more confident and capable young person, better prepared to navigate the unique challenges that would accompany her throughout her life as a member of the royal family. The incident had also strengthened Charlotte's relationship with her parents, who had been impressed by their daughter's maturity and resilience in handling such a frightening experience. The family had grown closer through the shared challenge of processing and recovering from the trauma. Charlotte has shown us that she possesses the strength and wisdom that will serve her well in her future role, William confided to Catherine during one of their private conversations. This experience has been terrible and wonderful at the same time. Catherine agreed with this assessment, noting that Charlotte's response to the incident had provided valuable insights into her character and capabilities. She has the emotional intelligence and courage that will be essential for her future responsibilities, Catherine observed. As autumn arrived at Windsor Castle, the incident in the writing arena had become part of the family's shared history rather than an ongoing source of trauma or anxiety. The lessons learned had been integrated into daily routines, the relationships affected had been strengthened, and Charlotte had emerged from the experience as a more confident and capable young person. The long-term legacy of the incident would continue to unfold over the years to come, influencing Charlotte's development, the evolution of royal security protocols, and the advancement of safety technologies. But, in the immediate aftermath, the most important outcome was that a young girl had learned valuable lessons about courage, resilience, and the importance of the people who dedicate their lives to protecting others. Charlotte's final writing lesson of the season included a special moment of recognition for Snowdrop, whose calm behavior during the incident had contributed to the positive outcome. The young princess had requested that her pony receive a special award for bravery, a gesture that demonstrated her understanding that courage comes in many forms. Snowdrop was just as brave as Detective Sergeant Mitchell, Charlotte declared during the presentation of a commemorative ribbon that she had designed herself. She trusted me to keep her safe, just like I trusted him to keep both of us safe. This insight into the interconnected nature of trust and protection reflected the wisdom that Charlotte had gained from her experience. She had learned that safety was not just the responsibility of protection officers but required cooperation and trust from everyone involved. As winter approached and the writing lessons moved to indoor facilities, Charlotte continued to demonstrate the improved skills and enhanced confidence that had emerged from her traumatic experience. Her instructors noted that she rode with greater awareness of her surroundings and better preparation for unexpected situations. The incident that had begun as a terrifying moment of danger had ultimately become a catalyst for growth, learning, and strengthened relationships. Charlotte's courage in facing her fears and her determination to continue pursuing activities she loved had set an example that would inspire others facing their own challenges and setbacks. The story of Princess Charlotte and the incident in the writing arena would be remembered not as a tale of near tragedy, but as a demonstration of how courage, training, and quick thinking could transform a potentially devastating situation into an opportunity for growth and positive change. The morning after the incident dawned gray and overcast, with a light drizzle that seemed to match the subdued mood throughout Windsor Castle. News of what had happened in the writing arena had spread quickly through the household staff, though official communications remained carefully controlled and limited to essential personnel only. Princess Charlotte woke earlier than usual, her sleep having been interrupted several times by dreams that replayed the previous day's events in various confusing combinations. She found herself remembering not just the moment when Detective Sergeant Mitchell had pulled her away from danger, but also the expression of confusion and distress on Camilla's face as she emerged from her damaged Range Rover. Catherine knocked gently on Charlotte's bedroom door before entering, carrying a breakfast tray that she knew her daughter would barely touch. The events of the previous day had affected the entire family, but Charlotte's parents were particularly concerned about any lasting psychological impact on their 9-year-old daughter. "Good morning, sweetheart," Catherine said, settling the tray on Charlotte's desk and opening the curtains to let in what little light the cloudy sky provided. "How are you feeling this morning?" Charlotte sat up in bed, her hair disheveled but her expression alert and thoughtful. "I keep thinking about yesterday, Mummy. Is Grandmama Camilla really okay? Can we visit her today?" This question had been anticipated by Charlotte's parents during their late-night discussion about how to handle the aftermath of the incident. They had agreed that honesty, carefully presented, would serve Charlotte better than attempts to minimize or dismiss what had occurred. "Grandmama Camilla is receiving the best possible medical care," Catherine replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. The doctors want to run some additional tests to make sure they understand exactly what caused her to become confused while driving. Charlotte processed this information with the seriousness that she brought to all important matters.
Was it because she's getting older? Papa mentioned that sometimes older people have problems with their memory.
The perceptiveness of this question reminded Catherine that Charlotte possessed an emotional intelligence that often surprised adults who interacted with her. The young princess had clearly been thinking about the incident in terms that went beyond her own experience of danger. That's one possibility that the doctors are investigating, Catherine acknowledged. Sometimes people experience temporary confusion for various reasons, and it's important to understand what caused it so they can receive appropriate help. Meanwhile, in the medical wing of Windsor Castle, Camilla was indeed undergoing comprehensive testing under the supervision of the royal physicians. Dr. Sarah Henderson, who had served as the primary royal physician for over a decade, was coordinating with specialists from London to ensure that every possible cause of the previous day's episode was thoroughly investigated. The initial tests had revealed no obvious signs of stroke, seizure, or other acute medical conditions. However, Dr. Henderson's experience with elderly patients had taught her that episodes of confusion could result from a wide variety of factors, ranging from medication interactions to temporary blood pressure fluctuations to simple fatigue and stress. Camilla herself seemed largely recovered from whatever had caused her disorientation during the drive. She had clear memory of the morning up until the point when she got into her car, and she remembered emerging from the vehicle in the riding arena, but the time in between remained frustratingly blank. "I simply cannot understand how I ended up in that arena," she told Dr. Henderson during the morning examination. "The last thing I remember clearly is leaving the main castle to drive to my appointment in the village.
I've made that drive hundreds of times without any difficulty."
Dr. Henderson made careful notes of these details while conducting her physical examination.
"Your Royal Highness, temporary memory gaps following episodes of confusion are not uncommon.
The important thing is that you appear to have returned to your normal baseline mental state." The investigation into the incident itself was being conducted by a team that included representatives from the Royal Protection Unit, the local police, and specialists in automotive safety. The Range Rover had been carefully examined for any mechanical defects that might have contributed to the accident, but preliminary findings suggested that the vehicle had been functioning normally. Detective Inspector Robert Fraser, who led the Royal Protection Unit's investigation division, had spent the morning reviewing security footage from various cameras around the castle grounds. The footage clearly showed Camilla's vehicle following its normal route until the moment when it began to deviate from the road and head toward the riding arena. The driver's behavior suggests a sudden onset of confusion or disorientation, Fraser explained to his team during their morning briefing.
"There's no evidence of intentional action or external interference.
This appears to be a medical episode that occurred at an unfortunate moment." The team also reviewed the response protocols that had been followed during the incident. Detective Sergeant Mitchell's actions were being analyzed not for criticism but for lessons that could be applied to future training programs. His quick recognition of the developing threat and his decisive response had prevented what could have been a tragedy. Mitchell's performance yesterday represents exactly the kind of split-second decision-making we hope to see from our officers, Fraser told the team. His training allowed him to assess a complex situation rapidly and take appropriate action to protect his principal. Back in the main castle, Charlotte was having her own breakfast meeting with her father, who had decided to address her questions about the incident with the directness that he felt she deserved. William had served in emergency response roles during his military career, and he understood the importance of processing traumatic events rather than attempting to ignore them. "Charlotte, I want you to understand that what happened yesterday was very unusual," William told his daughter as they shared breakfast in his private study. "Detective Sergeant Mitchell is trained specifically to handle situations like that, and he did exactly what he was supposed to do." Charlotte listened carefully, her young mind working to organize the complex emotions and thoughts that the incident had generated.
"Papa, was I really in serious danger? Would Grandmama Camilla's car actually have hurt me and Snowdrop?" William took a moment to consider how to answer this question honestly while being appropriate for a 9-year-old's understanding.
"Yes, sweetheart. If Detective Sergeant Mitchell hadn't been there to move you out of the way, you and Snowdrop could have been seriously injured. The gravity of this acknowledgement settled over Charlotte like a weight. She had known that something serious had occurred, but hearing her father confirm the reality of the danger she had faced made it more concrete and immediate. "I want to thank him properly," Charlotte announced with the decisiveness that marked many of her decisions. "He saved my life, and Snowdrop's too. That's not the kind of thing you just forget about." This request led to a discussion between Charlotte's parents about how to appropriately acknowledge Mitchell's actions. Royal protocol provided guidelines for recognizing exceptional service by protection officers, but Charlotte's personal desire to express gratitude added a dimension that required careful consideration. Dr. Henderson's continued examination of Camilla included a detailed review of her medications, her recent stress levels, and any changes in her daily routine that might have contributed to the episode of confusion. The Queen Consort had been maintaining a particularly busy schedule in recent weeks, with multiple public appearances and official duties that had required extensive travel. "Sometimes our bodies tell us to slow down in ways that we don't immediately recognize," Dr. Henderson explained gently. "Even minor changes in sleep patterns, meal timing, or stress levels can affect our cognitive function, particularly as we get older." Camilla nodded thoughtfully, though she remained frustrated by her inability to remember the crucial minutes when she had lost control of her vehicle. "The idea that I could have seriously injured Charlotte is almost unbearable to contemplate. That sweet child could have been killed because of something that happened to me." The doctor's response reflected both her medical expertise and her understanding of the psychological impact that such incidents could have on everyone involved. "Your Royal Highness, medical episodes are not moral failings. They are health situations that require appropriate response and treatment." The media management aspect of the incident was being handled by the Royal Communications team, led by Sarah Morrison, who had been crafting public statements about royal family matters for over 6 years. The challenge was to provide sufficient information to satisfy public curiosity while protecting the privacy and dignity of all family members involved. Morrison's team had prepared a brief statement acknowledging that a minor vehicle incident occurred on castle grounds involving 2 members of the royal family, with no injuries reported. The statement emphasized that both family members were receiving appropriate medical attention as a precautionary measure. The decision to provide minimal public details reflected the royal family's long-standing policy of maintaining privacy around personal and medical matters. However, Morrison knew that speculation and rumors would inevitably fill any information vacuum that the official silence created. "We need to balance transparency with privacy," Morrison explained to her team during their planning session. "The public has a right to know that there was an incident and that everyone is safe, but they don't need details about medical conditions or specific circumstances." Meanwhile, Margaret Thompson was dealing with her own emotional aftermath from the previous day's events. As Charlotte's writing instructor, she felt a deep sense of responsibility for anything that happened during lessons, even when the danger came from completely external sources. Margaret had taught children to ride for over 20 years, and she had developed protocols for handling various emergency situations that could arise during lessons. However, nothing in her experience had prepared her for watching a car crash through the arena fence while one of her students was airborne over a jump. "I keep replaying those few seconds in my mind," Margaret confided to her colleague, David Walsh, who managed the castle's equestrian facilities. "If Detective Sergeant Mitchell hadn't been there, if his reflexes had been even slightly slower, we would have witnessed something too terrible to imagine." David, who had known Margaret throughout her tenure at the castle, could see that she was struggling with feelings of helplessness and guilt that were common among professionals who witness traumatic events involving children in their care. "Margaret, you followed all the right protocols," David assured her. "You positioned yourself correctly, you had emergency communications available, and, when you saw the protection officer's signal, you responded appropriately. No one could have prevented what happened, but everyone involved responded correctly." The conversation between Charlotte and her parents continued throughout the morning, with the young princess asking thoughtful questions about safety protocols, the role of protection officers, and the nature of medical emergencies. Her parents were struck by her maturity in processing such a frightening experience. "I think I understand why we have protection officers now," Charlotte told her parents. "Before yesterday, I thought they were just following us around because that's what grown-ups do. But Detective Sergeant Mitchell actually saved my life. This realization represented a significant shift in Charlotte's understanding of her position within the royal family and the unique challenges that came with her birthright. At 9 years old, she was beginning to comprehend that her future role would involve both privileges and risks that most people never experienced. William and Catherine exchanged glances, recognizing that their daughter had reached a new level of awareness about the realities of royal life. This understanding would serve her well as she grew older, but it also marked the end of a certain innocence about the world around her. Dr. Henderson completed her examination of Camilla by mid-morning and requested consultation with a neurologist to conduct additional specialized testing. While her initial assessment suggested that the episode had been temporary and was unlikely to recur, medical protocol required comprehensive evaluation of any incident involving confusion and disorientation.
I'm recommending that we conduct some additional tests over the next few days, Dr. Henderson informed Camilla.
These will help us rule out any underlying conditions and provide guidance about preventing similar episodes in the future. Camilla accepted this recommendation with the grace that she brought to all medical matters, though she remained deeply concerned about the impact of her condition on Charlotte's well-being and on public confidence in the royal family's stability. The technical investigation of the Range Rover revealed that the vehicle had been mechanically sound at the time of the incident. The braking system, steering mechanisms, and electronic controls had all been functioning normally, which confirmed that the accident had resulted from driver incapacitation rather than equipment failure. Detective Inspector Fraser's team also interviewed the groundskeeping staff who had been working in the area around the time of the incident. Their accounts confirmed that Camilla's vehicle had been traveling at a normal speed until the moment when it began to deviate from its intended path. The evidence consistently points to a sudden medical episode affecting the driver's cognitive function, Fraser summarized in his preliminary report. There are no indications of mechanical failure, external interference, or intentional actions. Charlotte's request to personally thank Detective Sergeant Mitchell led her parents to arrange a private meeting that afternoon. They felt that allowing their daughter to express her gratitude directly would help her process the incident while also providing appropriate recognition for Mitchell's exceptional service. Mitchell arrived at the private family quarters wearing his dress uniform, a gesture of respect for the formal nature of the occasion. Despite his years of service with the royal family, he found himself slightly nervous about meeting with Charlotte in this context. Detective Sergeant Mitchell, Charlotte said, standing to greet him with the formal posture that had been drilled into her since early childhood, "I wanted to thank you personally for saving my life and Snowdrop's life yesterday." The directness of her statement and the seriousness with which she delivered it caught Mitchell somewhat off guard. He had expected a more casual conversation, but Charlotte's approach reflected her understanding that what had occurred between them was a matter of profound significance. "Your Royal Highness, it was my honor and privilege to ensure your safety," Mitchell replied, following the formal protocols that govern such interactions.
"This is exactly why I chose to serve in the Royal Protection Unit."
Charlotte had prepared for this meeting by thinking carefully about what she wanted to say. "I've been thinking about what happened, and I want you to know that I understand how quickly you had to make your decision. You didn't know whether you would be hurt yourself, but you protected me anyway." This observation demonstrated a level of emotional sophistication that impressed both Mitchell and Charlotte's parents. The young princess had grasped not just the fact that she had been saved, but the personal risk that Mitchell had accepted in order to protect her. "Your Royal Highness, protecting members of the royal family is not just my job, it's my calling," Mitchell responded. "Yesterday reminded me why this work is so important and meaningful." The conversation continued for nearly 30 minutes, with Charlotte asking detailed questions about Mitchell's training, his experience with the royal family, and his thoughts about the previous day's events. Her parents listened with growing appreciation for their daughter's ability to engage with serious topics.
Dr. Henderson's consultation with the neurologist, Dr. James Whitfield, took place that afternoon via secure video conference.
Dr. Whitfield reviewed the medical findings and recommended a specific series of tests that could be conducted over the following week. "Based on the information you've provided, this appears to have been a transient episode of confusion, possibly related to multiple factors including fatigue, stress, and perhaps medication interactions," Dr. Whitfield told Dr. Henderson. "The good news is that Her Royal Highness seems to have returned to her normal cognitive baseline. However, Dr. Whitfield also recommended temporary restrictions on Camilla's driving privileges until the testing could be completed and the underlying cause of the episode could be definitively determined. This recommendation would require delicate handling given Camilla's active schedule and her desire to maintain her independence. The evening brought the royal family together for a private dinner that served as both a debriefing session and a moment to reconnect after the previous day's trauma. Charlotte had specifically requested that the meal include Camilla, whose medical team had cleared her for normal family activities. "Grandmama Camilla," Charlotte said as they gathered around the family dining table, "I want you to know that I don't blame you for what happened yesterday." Detective Sergeant Mitchell explained that medical emergencies can happen to anyone. Camilla's eyes filled with tears as she heard these words from her step-granddaughter. She had been dreading this conversation, uncertain how to address the fact that her medical episode had put Charlotte in mortal danger. "Charlotte, my dear, I am so profoundly sorry that my confusion yesterday put you at risk," Camilla replied, her voice carrying the weight of genuine remorse. "The thought that I could have seriously injured you will haunt me for the rest of my life." Charlotte's response reflected the emotional maturity that continued to surprise the adults around her. "Grandmama, Detective Sergeant Mitchell told me that medical emergencies are not anyone's fault. They're just things that happen sometimes, and the important thing is that everyone is okay now." This exchange marked a turning point in how the family processed the incident. Charlotte's ability to separate the person from the medical condition helped everyone involved begin to move forward constructively rather than remaining trapped in guilt and recrimination. The dinner conversation gradually shifted to discussions about enhanced safety protocols, the possibility of adjusting Charlotte's writing schedule, and the importance of medical monitoring for all family members. These were serious topics, but they were addressed with the kind of practical problem-solving approach that characterized the royal family's handling of challenges. William took the opportunity to reinforce some important lessons with his daughter. "Charlotte, yesterday's events remind us that we live with certain risks because of who we are, but we also have exceptional people like Detective Sergeant Mitchell who dedicate their lives to keeping us safe." Charlotte nodded thoughtfully. "Papa, I think I understand better now why you and Mummy always tell us to listen to our protection officers and follow their instructions. They really do know things that we don't know." As the evening concluded, Charlotte made one final request that surprised everyone at the table. "I would like to go back to writing tomorrow, if Margaret thinks it's appropriate. I don't want yesterday's accident to make me afraid of something I love doing." This statement demonstrated not just courage but also the kind of resilience that would serve Charlotte well throughout her future role in the royal family. Her parents exchanged glances of pride and concern, recognizing that their daughter was choosing to face her fears rather than allowing them to control her actions. Catherine spoke first. "Sweetheart, that's a very brave decision, but I want to make sure you've really thought about it. It's perfectly normal to feel nervous about returning to writing after what happened." Charlotte's response was immediate and confident. "Mummy, I've thought about it a lot. The accident didn't happen because writing is dangerous. It happened because of Grandmama Camilla's medical emergency. Those are two completely different things." This logical analysis of the situation impressed everyone present and confirmed that Charlotte had processed the incident with remarkable clarity and emotional intelligence. Her ability to separate the traumatic circumstances from the activity she loved demonstrated a maturity that would serve her well in dealing with future challenges. The day ended with enhanced security protocols being quietly implemented throughout the castle grounds. These changes were designed to provide additional layers of protection without significantly altering the family's daily routines or creating an atmosphere of fear. Detective Inspector Fraser's team had already begun reviewing all vehicle access procedures and implementing additional communication protocols between protection officers and castle security. The goal was to ensure that any future medical emergencies or security incidents could be identified and responded to even more quickly. As Charlotte prepared for bed that night, she reflected on the conversations and decisions of the day. The incident in the writing arena had taught her important lessons about courage, responsibility, and the value of the people who dedicated their lives to protecting her family. She fell asleep with the determination to return to writing the next day, to continue expressing gratitude to Detective Sergeant Mitchell, and to support Grandmama Camilla through whatever medical challenges lay ahead. In facing her first real brush with danger, Princess Charlotte had discovered reserves of strength and wisdom that would serve her well throughout her life. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestones of Windsor Great Park as Princess Charlotte adjusted her riding helmet one final time. At 9 years old, she had already developed the confident posture that marked her as a true member of the royal family, though today she seemed more excited than usual about her weekly riding lesson. "Your Royal Highness, please remember to stay close to the designated path," said Margaret Thompson, her riding instructor, as she helped Charlotte mount her favorite pony, Snowdrop. Margaret had been teaching royal children for over 15 years, and she knew that Charlotte inherited her mother's adventurous spirit along with her father's determination. Charlotte nodded enthusiastically, her dark hair catching the early morning light beneath her safety helmet. She had been looking forward to this lesson all week, especially since her parents had promised she could try jumping over slightly higher obstacles today. The young princess had shown remarkable natural ability in the saddle, much like her grandmother had at the same age. Detective Sergeant James Mitchell stood approximately 30 meters away, his trained eyes scanning the surrounding area with the methodical precision that had made him one of the most trusted protection officers in the Royal Protection Unit. At 42 years old, Mitchell had served in this capacity for nearly 8 years, and his dedication to the safety of the royal family had never wavered for a single moment. Mitchell's background made him particularly well-suited for this role. Before joining the protection unit, he had served 12 years in the Metropolitan Police, specializing in threat assessment and close protection work for high-profile individuals. His calm demeanor and quick thinking had already prevented several potential incidents, though most of these interventions remained unknown to the public and even to the royal family members themselves. On this particular morning, Mitchell noticed something that made him pause. His radio had been unusually quiet, which typically meant either a very calm day or communication problems. He touched his earpiece gently and spoke in the low, professional tone that all protection officers used during operations. "Control, this is Mitchell. Radio check, over." The response came back clear and immediate. "Mitchell, this is Control. Reading you 5 by 5. All stations report normal status." Mitchell felt slightly more at ease, but his training had taught him never to completely relax during an assignment. He watched as Charlotte guided Snowdrop through a series of basic warm-up exercises, her young face bright with concentration and joy. The sight reminded him why he had chosen this career path after leaving regular police work. The riding arena occupied a section of Windsor Great Park that had been specifically designed for royal family use. Surrounded by carefully maintained hedges and access through a private entrance, it provided both privacy and security for the family's equestrian activities. The arena itself measured roughly 60 meters by 40 meters, with professional-grade footing and obstacles that could be adjusted for riders of different skill levels. Margaret had set up a course of small jumps for Charlotte's lesson, each one carefully chosen to challenge the young princess without putting her at unnecessary risk. The jumps ranged from 18 inches to 2 feet in height, perfect for building confidence while developing proper technique. "Remember to keep your heels down and your eyes looking ahead to the next jump," Margaret called out as Charlotte approached the first obstacle. "Don't look down at the jump itself." Charlotte followed the instructions perfectly, and Snowdrop cleared the small fence with room to spare. The princess's face lit up with pure delight as she felt the moment of flight, that magical instant when both horse and rider seemed to defy gravity. Mitchell smiled slightly as he watched this display of youthful enthusiasm, though his eyes never stopped their systematic scan of the surrounding area. Years of experience had taught him to appreciate these moments of normalcy while remaining constantly alert for anything that might threaten the safety of his charges. The morning progressed smoothly for nearly 45 minutes. Charlotte successfully navigated the entire course multiple times, each attempt building her confidence and improving her technique. Margaret provided gentle corrections and enthusiastic praise in equal measure, creating the supportive environment that allowed the young princess to flourish. It was during Charlotte's 8th trip around the course that Mitchell first noticed the approaching vehicle. A dark blue Range Rover was traveling along the service road that ran parallel to the riding arena, moving at what appeared to be a normal speed for that particular stretch of pavement. Mitchell's training kicked in immediately. While vehicles used that road regularly for maintenance and groundskeeping activities, protocol required him to identify every approaching car and assess any potential threat level.
He reached for his radio to request information about scheduled vehicle movements in the area. Control, this is Mitchell. I have a dark blue Range Rover approaching on Service Road 7. Can you confirm if this is a scheduled movement?
There was a brief pause before the response came back.
Mitchell, stand by. Checking the movement log now.
During this exchange, Charlotte had begun her approach to the largest jump in the course, a 2-foot fence that she had successfully cleared several times already. Her concentration was complete, her young mind focused entirely on the technical aspects of the jump that Margaret had taught her. Mitchell glanced toward the princess, noting her position and trajectory, then looked back at the approaching vehicle. Something about its movement pattern had begun to concern him. The Range Rover seemed to be traveling slightly faster than normal, and its path appeared to be drifting toward the center of the road rather than maintaining a steady line. Control, still waiting for confirmation on that vehicle, Mitchell said into his radio, his voice remaining calm but carrying a subtle note of increased urgency. Mitchell, we show no scheduled movements on Service Road 7 at this time.
Recommend you investigate.
This response triggered a higher level of alertness in Mitchell's mind. An unscheduled vehicle in the area required immediate attention, though he had to balance investigation with his primary responsibility of maintaining visual contact with Princess Charlotte. Charlotte guided Snowdrop into the final turn before the 2-foot jump, her technique showing marked improvement from her earlier attempts. The young princess had found her rhythm, and both horse and rider moved with increasing confidence and precision. Mitchell began walking toward the road while keeping Charlotte in his peripheral vision. The Range Rover continued its approach, and he could now see that there appeared to be only one person inside, a woman behind the wheel. The vehicle's speed seemed excessive for the narrow service road, and its path remained erratic. "Margaret," Mitchell called out, his voice carrying clearly across the arena. "Please have Her Royal Highness hold position after this jump." Margaret looked up immediately, recognizing the tone that protection officers used when they had identified a potential concern. She raised her hand to signal Charlotte, though the princess had already begun her approach to the fence and was unlikely to see the gesture in time. Mitchell's experience allowed him to process multiple streams of information simultaneously. Charlotte was approximately 3 strides away from takeoff. The Range Rover was roughly 100 meters from the point where the service road came closest to the riding arena. The distance between the road and the arena was approximately 15 meters, with only a low hedge and a simple post in the rail fence providing separation. The mathematics of the situation began to align in Mitchell's mind in a way that triggered every alarm his training had instilled. Charlotte would be airborne over the jump at almost exactly the moment the Range Rover reached the closest point to the arena. If the vehicle left the road for any reason, the princess would be completely vulnerable. Mitchell started running. His years of physical training and his natural athletic ability allowed him to cover ground quickly, but the distances involved meant that every second counted. He could see Charlotte rising in her stirrups as Snowdrop approached the takeoff point for the jump. The Range Rover's behavior became even more erratic. It was now clearly traveling too fast for the road conditions, and Mitchell could see that it was beginning to drift toward the left side of the pavement, the side closest to the riding arena. "Control, I need immediate backup at the riding arena," Mitchell said into his radio as he ran. "Potential vehicle incident in progress." Charlotte felt Snowdrop gather herself beneath the saddle as they approached the jump. The young princess experienced that familiar moment of anticipation, the brief instant before takeoff when everything seemed to hold its breath. She had successfully completed this same jump multiple times during the lesson, and her confidence was high. Margaret watched with growing concern as she noticed Mitchell's urgent movement toward the road. Her years of experience working with the royal family had taught her to trust the judgment of protection officers completely, even when she couldn't immediately see the source of their concern. Mitchell reached the hedge separating the arena from the service road just as Charlotte and Snowdrop became airborne. The Range Rover was now less than 50 meters away and showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, it seemed to be accelerating slightly. Through the vehicle's windshield, Mitchell could see the driver more clearly. The woman appeared to be middle-aged, with blonde hair, and she seemed to be looking down at something in her lap rather than focusing on the road ahead. Her hands were moving in a way that suggested she might be reaching for something or adjusting something inside the car.
The realization hit Mitchell like a physical blow. The driver was distracted, possibly by a phone or some other device, and had no awareness of her vehicle's current path or speed. The Range Rover was going to leave the road, and it was going to happen right now. Charlotte felt the exhilaration of flight as Snowdrop soared over the 2-foot fence. For a brief, perfect moment, she experienced the joy that had made her fall in love with riding in the first place. Horse and rider moved together in harmony, suspended between earth and sky. Mitchell vaulted over the low hedge with the fluid motion of someone whose life had been spent in physical training. His feet had barely touched the ground on the far side when he saw the Range Rover's front wheels leave the pavement and begin tearing through the grass verge. The vehicle's momentum carried it directly toward the post and rail fence that marked the boundary of the riding arena. At its current speed and trajectory, the Range Rover would smash through the fence and continue into the arena itself, exactly where Charlotte and Snowdrop would be landing from their jump. Time seemed to slow down as Mitchell's mind processed the unfolding emergency. Charlotte was still airborne, committed to her landing trajectory. The Range Rover was now completely off the road and accelerating across the grass. Margaret stood frozen in position, her experienced eye taking in the developing disaster but unable to do anything to prevent it. Mitchell had perhaps 2 seconds to cover the remaining distance to Charlotte's landing zone. His decision was immediate and absolute. He would put himself between the princess and the out-of-control vehicle, regardless of the personal cost. The sound of the Range Rover's engine grew louder as it approached the arena fence. Mitchell could hear the distinctive noise of grass and dirt being thrown up by spinning tires as the driver, still apparently unaware of what was happening, continued to accelerate. Charlotte began to descend from her jump, Snowdrop's front hooves reaching toward the ground in preparation for landing. The young princess felt the familiar sensation of returning to Earth, her mind already planning the next phase of the course. Mitchell's final sprint covered the last few meters in a blur of desperate motion. Every muscle in his body was focused on reaching Charlotte before the Range Rover could complete its destructive path into the arena. Behind them, the sound of splintering would announce that the vehicle had reached the arena fence. The post and rail barrier, designed to contain horses rather than stop cars, offered virtually no resistance to the Range Rover's momentum. Mitchell reached Charlotte's position just as Snowdrop's hooves touched the ground. Without hesitation, he grabbed both the princess and her pony, using his body weight and momentum to push them sideways, away from the path of the oncoming vehicle. The Range Rover burst through the remains of the fence and continued into the arena, its engine roaring and its wheels throwing up clouds of arena footing. The vehicle's path took it directly through the space where Charlotte would have been if Mitchell had not intervened. Charlotte felt herself being lifted and moved with sudden, powerful force. Her first reaction was confusion rather than fear, as her young mind struggled to understand what was happening. She could hear Snowdrop whinnying in alarm and felt the pony's muscles tensing as Mitchell guided them both away from immediate danger. The Range Rover finally came to a stop near the center of the arena, its front bumper buried in one of the jumping obstacles that Margaret had carefully arranged for the lesson. Steam began to rise from under the hood, and the sudden silence that followed the engine shutdown seemed almost deafening. Mitchell kept his body positioned between Charlotte and the now stationary vehicle, his training dictating that he maintain protective positioning until he could be certain the threat had passed. His heart was pounding from the exertion and adrenaline, but his voice remained calm and controlled. "Your Royal Highness, are you injured in any way?" he asked, his hands checking quickly for any obvious signs of harm. Charlotte, still trying to process what had just occurred, shook her head silently. Snowdrop seemed shaken but unharmed, though the pony's eyes were wide with alarm and her breathing was rapid. Margaret ran toward them, her face pale with shock and concern. "Charlotte, are you all right? What happened?" "Everyone appears to be uninjured," Mitchell reported into his radio, though his eyes remained fixed on the Range Rover. "Vehicle has stopped. I need medical backup and senior command personnel on site immediately." The driver's door of the Range Rover opened slowly, and a woman emerged looking dazed and confused. She appeared to be in her mid-70s, with platinum blonde hair and expensive clothing that had become disheveled during the incident. Mitchell recognized her immediately.
The woman climbing out of the damaged vehicle was Camilla, the queen consort, and the realization added an entirely new dimension to an already complex situation. "Oh my goodness," Camilla said, her voice carrying clearly across the arena.
"What on earth has happened? Where am I?"
The confusion in her voice was genuine, and Mitchell's trained eye quickly assessed that she appeared to be disoriented rather than injured. However, protocol demanded that he treat this as a potential medical emergency until qualified personnel could make a proper evaluation. "Ma'am, please remain where you are," Mitchell called out in the respectful but firm tone that royal protection officers used when addressing family members during security incidents.
"Medical assistance is on the way."
Charlotte finally found her voice.
"Is that Grandmama Camilla? Why is she here? Why did her car come into the arena?"
These were excellent questions, and Mitchell found himself wishing he had clear answers to provide. The situation had developed so rapidly that there had been no time for analysis, only reaction. Additional protection officers began arriving on the scene, their vehicles approaching with the swift efficiency that marked all royal security operations.
Mitchell could hear the distinctive sound of multiple radios coordinating response efforts.
Margaret had succeeded in calming Snowdrop, though the pony remained alert and nervous. "Charlotte, I think we should get you away from the arena until the grown-ups can sort this out," she suggested. "No," Charlotte replied with surprising firmness.
"I want to make sure Grandmama Camilla is okay. She looks confused."
Mitchell found himself impressed by the young princess's concern for others, even in the aftermath of what had nearly been a tragic accident. This kind of selfless response suggested that Charlotte possessed the character traits that would serve her well throughout her future role in the royal family. The lead protection officer for the queen consort arrived and immediately took charge of Camilla's welfare, while Mitchell remained focused on Charlotte's safety. The two officers exchanged brief hand signals to coordinate their response without causing additional confusion. "Your Royal Highness," Mitchell said gently, "your parents will want to see that you're safe.
Would you allow me to escort you back to the main building?"
Charlotte considered this suggestion carefully, her young mind weighing her desire to help against her training to follow the guidance of adults in positions of responsibility.
"Will someone make sure Grandmama Camilla gets the help she needs?" "Absolutely," Mitchell assured her. "She's already being taken care of by people who are specially trained for exactly this kind of situation." As if to confirm his words, a medical team arrived on the scene and immediately began their assessment of Camilla's condition. Their movements were professional and efficient, suggesting that this was far from their first experience with unusual incidents involving members of the royal family. Charlotte nodded slowly and allowed Mitchell to help her dismount from Snowdrop. Margaret took charge of the pony, speaking to her in the soothing tones that experienced horse handlers used to calm nervous animals. As they walked away from the arena, Charlotte looked back over her shoulder at the scene behind them. The Range Rover sat amid the scattered remains of the jumping course, steam still rising from its engine compartment. Medical personnel surrounded Camilla, their quiet voices and gentle movements suggesting that her condition was being properly managed. "Detective Sergeant Mitchell," Charlotte said, using his full title with the formality that had been drilled into her since early childhood, "thank you for protecting me and Snowdrop." Mitchell felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the physical exertion of the past few minutes. "It's my privilege and honor, Your Royal Highness. This is exactly why I chose this job." The walk back to the main building took several minutes, during which Charlotte asked thoughtful questions about what had happened and why. Mitchell answered as honestly as he could while avoiding speculation about Camilla's condition or the causes of the incident. By the time they reached the building, word of the incident had already reached Charlotte's parents. Prince William and Catherine emerged from the main entrance with expressions that combined relief at seeing their daughter unharmed with concern about what had transpired. "Charlotte!"
Catherine called out, opening her arms to embrace her daughter. "We heard there was some kind of accident.
Are you hurt?"
"I'm fine, Mummy," Charlotte replied, accepting the hug but maintaining the composed demeanor that seemed to come naturally to her.
"Detective Sergeant Mitchell saved me and Snowdrop from Grandmama Camilla's car."
William approached Mitchell with the expression of a father who had just learned his child had been in mortal danger.
"James, I need a complete briefing on what happened out there."
"Of course, Your Royal Highness," Mitchell replied. The immediate threat has been neutralized, and Her Royal Highness Princess Charlotte was not injured. The Queen Consort appears to be disoriented but physically unharmed, and she's currently receiving medical evaluation. The next hour passed in a blur of briefings, medical examinations, and coordination between multiple agencies. Charlotte submitted to a thorough medical check with good grace, though she repeatedly insisted that she felt fine and wanted to know about Camilla's condition. The initial medical assessment of Camilla suggested that she had experienced some form of temporary confusion or disorientation while driving, possibly related to medication or a minor medical episode. The investigation into the exact cause would continue, but the immediate priority was ensuring her health and well-being. Charlotte's parents made the decision to cancel the rest of her riding lesson and spend the day close to home, a choice that the young princess accepted with better grace than might have been expected from someone her age. As the various emergency personnel began to clear the scene, Mitchell found himself reflecting on how quickly a routine morning had transformed into a life-threatening situation. His training had prepared him for exactly this kind of incident, but the reality of seeing it unfold had been more intense than any simulation. The afternoon brought a series of meetings and debriefings as the various agencies involved worked to understand exactly what had occurred and how to prevent similar incidents in the future. Mitchell's account of events would become part of the official record, though most details would remain classified to protect the privacy of the royal family. Later that evening, as Mitchell completed his incident reports, he received a personal note from Prince William thanking him for his quick thinking and decisive action. The note was brief but heartfelt, acknowledging that his intervention had likely prevented a tragedy. Charlotte spent the rest of the day with her family, processing the morning's events with the resilience that seemed characteristic of her personality. She asked perceptive questions about car safety, medical emergencies, and the role of protection officers, demonstrating a level of maturity that impressed all the adults involved. As night fell over Windsor, the arena where the incident had occurred was quiet once again. The damaged fence had been temporarily repaired, the scattered jumping obstacles had been cleared away, and fresh footing had been spread to cover the tire tracks left by Camilla's Range Rover. The only remaining evidence of the morning's drama was a small section of grass near the road that showed signs of tire damage, and even that would be restored within days by the groundskeeping staff. Mitchell ended his shift with the satisfaction that came from knowing his training and instincts had served their intended purpose. The royal family was safe, a potentially tragic accident had been prevented, and the systems designed to protect them had functioned exactly as they should. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new responsibilities, but tonight he could rest with the knowledge that he had done his job well when it mattered most.